Hi, this is Simon Candy from Acoustic Guitar Lessons Online.net, and today I'm going to be answering questions that you've asked me below the comments in various videos across the channel. Now, I've no doubt that I've probably answered your question. However, I'm limited with text. Here we can go into much more detail and dig a little deeper, so that is what we're going to do. In this Q&A session, we cover topics including why you may not yet be able to play Travis picking tunes. I have one viewer who was quite frustrated trying to play Travis picking tunes. I'm going to address that and discover or lay out a few reasons why that might be. Also, I'll give you a really cool strategy for getting your fingers to move very, very efficiently from one chord change to another. I'll also show you the best way to fret chords as far as which fingers to use, and this really depends on the context in which you're playing, so I'll walk you through a few examples with that. And also, I'm going to tell you what the difference between a half diminished and a diminished chord is, as one viewer wanted to know. So let's get into it. The first question is from Ed Siemens. Now, I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce people's names here. I will do my best. I think that's how we might pronounce, I know it's Ed, but Siemens, I think, is the last name. Now, he's working on Travis picking, and I'm just going to sort of read from the question here. Done a lot of videos about Travis picking. He's tried every day for a month and cannot separate the fingers from the thumb. That's a big part of Travis picking and finger picking in general, is getting the independence of the thumb to the fingers. He's done all the exercises over and over. When it comes down to playing a Travis picking tune, it just doesn't work for him. Now, I'm assuming exercises over and over, he's talking about ones I've provided on videos. Let's just break that down a little bit. So you've done the exercises over and over. Okay, that's good in essence, but how have you done the exercises over and over? It's so easy. You don't intend to do this, of course, and sometimes you do it without even realizing. You repeat things over and over and think, okay, I just keep repeating this day in, day out. And most times you repeat, you have little errors. If that's the case, you're going to really get good at making those errors. So you've really got to make sure when you repeat things over and over that you're doing it accurately on a consistent basis. That's the first thing. You know, if I'll just pick a real, let's just say a little Travis picking pattern here. Right? Could be anything, doesn't matter. Make sure you're playing it slowly and that it's accurate consistently. Not accurate 1 out of 5 times, 2 out of 5 times, accurate 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10. We're human, so we'll allow for some mistakes, but really you want 9 out of 10 times. And there's a very simple little game you can play here. It's kind of, silly, but it works. And that is, you pick a number of times you want to play something accurately in a row. Let's say 10 times with this. Okay, you've got to play it 10 times in a row without a single mistake. And if you make a mistake on any one of the times you play through, so if it's the 6th time or the 7th time or the 10th time, the last time, and you make it just a simple mistake, you're going to go back to the start again and begin from 1 again and work your way through the repetitions until you do 10 in a row correct. This is really, really good because it forces you to play slow enough to be able to do that. If you can't get to 10 in a row, you're playing either too much of something and you've got to break it down further, and or you're playing it too slowly. So little consistency game, 10 in a row, or it could be 20 or 30 in a row, whatever you want to make it, okay? And it forces you to really focus on accuracy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you mentioned about doing the exercises, Ed, and then when I try and play a Travis picking tune, I just can't do it. Now, if you're doing the exercises I've given you and then you're just jumping into a Travis picking tune, that's a big step, and there's going to be little steps in between that you might be missing. Trying to go from a few simple Travis picking exercises straight into a Travis picking tune can be quite difficult. So, and when you do look at a Travis picking tune, make sure that, it's a simple one. Don't look at something too technical. Find a simple little Travis picking tune. But the thing is, doing the Travis picking pattern and then doing little melody parts on the top and all this sort of stuff, that's a big difference, just doing the pattern versus putting melody on top. There's more to it than just the pattern. So if you're going from the pattern into a whole Travis picking tune, there's a number of things you've got to be working on between those two things. And you said you've been trying this for I think you said over a month now, so about a month. So that's great, that's really, really good, but a month is not a long time, okay? So be patient, have realistic expectations. My basic sort of thing is when I practice something is I'm going to do it until I can do it, until I've mastered it. And I'm going to make sure I do things in a strategic, slow, relaxed way so I get there sooner rather than later, or not at all. Okay, so a month, that's fantastic, Ed, but keep going. It might just take 2 months or 3 or 4 months. Be patient, mix it in with other things that you're working on, and I'm sure you'll get there. The next question is from Mark Petrovic. Okay, and Mark is asking about a particular strategy that he saw me teach in a video on chord changes, which involves pushing the fingers into the chord all at the same time, really pushing down on the chord very hard and then relaxing, then pushing down and then relaxing. And he's basically asking about how that works. What's that doing to help our chord changes? So I'm just going to briefly run over this strategy. It's very, very effective, and then I'll tell you why it works. So let's say I've got a C chord, okay? And when I form that C chord, I want all my fingers, as I do with any chord, to fall on the chord at the same time. Okay, we don't want one finger, then the next, because obviously that's going to disrupt our fluency when we're playing chords and progressions and so forth. There's a number of strategies that work here, but the one I was covering in this video, amongst a couple of others, was to put your fingers on the chord. So in this case, I'm using the C chord as the example, and kind of squeeze the chord, like push the fingers right down onto the strings and into the fretboard. Much more than you would normally when you're fretting the chord, okay? So we don't want to push this hard normally, but for the purpose of the exercise we hold it for about 5-10 seconds, and then we relax. We don't lift the fingers off the strings at this point, we just relax them, so you wouldn't hear the notes if you were strumming them. And then you repeat. You push in, you hold 5-10 seconds, and then you relax. And you repeat this over and over. What's happening already, without doing anything else, because you push all those fingers down onto the chord at the same time, that's the key word there, the same time, it's teaching and training your fingers to fall on those notes and fret the notes at the same time, even though they're not coming away from the strings yet. Okay, that's really effective. Imprinting the chord and getting them to fall on the chord at the same time. And then as you do this, you start to lift the fingers away from the strings. So you've got a little bit of daylight between your fingers and the strings, but the key is bring them back down onto the notes of the chord at the same time. Okay, you're sort of lining up the target. And then have a go at just snapping down. Can you do it and snap the fingers all onto the notes at the same time? Now, probably when you first do this, it's going to end up everywhere. Maybe a few notes are wrong, etc. That's fine. Just do it. You've got to see where it's at before you then go back and size up your target and go nice and slow again. Just getting all those fingers to arrive at the same time. Go as slow as you need to, and then do a few rotations of just snapping it down. And you want to feel one point of contact with your fingers in the fretboard. That's the technique. It works. I think I've probably explained why it works, because it's getting all your fingers to just fall on the chords at the same time. If I go to any chord and you pause just before I make the chord change, you'll notice my chord's already formed in my fingers before I even put my fingers on the fretboard. That's how it's got to be. We form them in the air and then boom, they come down onto the notes of the chord at the same time. We don't want this sort of separate motion for each finger. You know, one note, then the next, then the next. So this is getting all your fingers to work together, forming and imprinting the shapes into your fingers before they actually land it down on the fretboard. Now, one little caveat here, when you are pushing really hard on the fingers to, imprint the shape into your fingers, as we were just saying, and then relaxing, make sure you don't squeeze the neck. Try and not push back as hard with the thumb as the fingers are pushing into the fretboard. Don't be over occupied with thinking about this, but it would be good if you can kind of, because the thumb should be pretty relaxed still. It's not going to push back. We don't squeeze the neck of the guitar. Our thumb is on the back as support. It's pushing in and weighing down, weighted down, and then the fingers are pushing in, but that does not mean the thumb has to push in equally as hard. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. But that's a really cool strategy. I'll link to the video that came from, and you can check out that and other strategies for making really nice, smooth, efficient chord changes. Question 3 is from Wayo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They are asking how to fret chords for finger picking. Now, there isn't really a specific way to fret chords for finger picking per se, but there are certain ways you'll fret chords for certain situations when you're playing within certain contexts. So there's not always necessarily just one way to fret a particular chord. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. G chord, okay? Typically you might play G with all 4 fingers like this, or you can play G. In fact, let's use the G with the 3 fingers. I mean, you got those 2 choices, right? With the first, the second, and the third, or you could play the 2 notes on top. By default, I play that one a lot of the time. And that way of playing a G chord It's typically how you play a G chord when you're strumming and so forth, right? However, sometimes you might play it with your pinky, second and third fingers, okay? Now that might feel really uncomfortable. I know I didn't play it like that for quite a while. I wouldn't say just try and fret chords any old way for the sake of it, but this particular G is good for when you're going back and forth between a G and a C, particularly the type of C chord where we put the G on top, okay? This sort of thing, right? That's much more efficient than sort of going like this. You can do that, so that's not wrong, but you might consider this way in that particular context. I'm not saying always when you go G to C do you need to do that, but staying with this G, when you play embellishments on a G chord, adding little melodic parts or chord melody stuff, quite often, and this is to do with finger picking more so, quite often you'll play basically only need your third finger for the chord. So you play the G note on the bottom string, you block out the fifth string, because we don't want to hear that, and then you include the open fourth, third and second strings. Okay? That's a nice full sounding G chord with one finger. And better yet, we've now got first, second and pinky, but particularly first and second fingers, to play little embellishments. Or if there's a melody of some sort, you've got a fret here. Okay, instead try and do that with your G like that, or even to a slightly lesser extent like this. It's just much easier, much more efficient, and easier with a number of things, a number of reasons to be able to get a night. You can basically play a full G scale with the G chord ringing through the whole time, like you're on a piano and there's your G chord in your bass and you're playing the scale on top. So sometimes you play a G with just one finger like that. You could also play it with the third finger and the pinky on top, and then you can suspend the chord, add the 9 or the 6. Okay, so just within the world of G major open chord, there's a number of ways that you can fret it. One more example. But this is really this is for everything. When you're playing chords, think about the context in which you're playing the chord, and that will often dictate and direct you to how you might fret it. If we just stay with G here, but a bar chord, of course we can play G like this, but a lot of the time, well, no, not a lot of the time, but some of the time, you play it with the thumb over the top. Similar reasons, that then it frees up the pinky to play little embellishments and so forth. And John Harley asked on one of the videos, I think it might have been one of the motive videos, about half diminished chords. He was a little confused, and it was my error here. What I was saying was half diminished, but the text on the screen said diminished in reference to a chord within a key. So that is my error there, so apologies for the confusion, but let me break down what is the difference. What is half diminished? What is diminished? So have a look here. Let's look at C major. So we've got C major, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, of course. Now that's the notes in the key of C. We can harmonize those notes to create the chords in the key. Traditional harmony is tertian harmony, which means stacked thirds. Okay, each of the notes in a chord are a third apart. So if we harmonize the C note, we get C, E, G. That's a triad, and that's a major chord, and there's a third between the C to the E and the E to the G. If we do the same with D, we get D, F, and A for a D minor chord. We do the same for E, E, G, and B. That's an E minor chord. F, A, C, the 4 chord, that's F. G, B, D, that's G major, the 5 chord. A, C, and E, that is the minor chord, 6 chord in this case, A minor. And then if we harmonize in thirds from the 7th note, B, we get D and F, and that is a diminished triad. These are all triads, 3-note chords. That last one is a diminished triad, B, D, and F. The reason why it's diminished is because there's equal distance. They're both minor thirds, B to D and D to F. And all those chords are diatonic to the key, which simply means all the notes in the chords belong to the key. Now, if I go one extra voice in here on each of those chords, so they're not going to be triads anymore, they're going to be extended, I get C, E, G, B for C major 7, D, F, A, C for D minor 7, E, G, B, D for E minor 7, F, A, C, E for F major 7, G, B, D, F for G7, A, C, E, G for A minor 7. And when I get to the 7th chord, B, D, F is diminished, but if I go another note above, a third above to A, that now becomes a half diminished. It's B, D, F, and A. So I've just loosely sort of said diminished, half diminished. It depends how far you go harmonizing that note. If you harmonize it with 2 other notes for a triad, it's diminished. If you harmonize it one step further, staying diatonic to the key, so it's got to be an A, then it's half diminished. Okay, and what you might notice depends on your theory knowledge at this point, but B to D is a minor third, D to F is a minor third, but F to A is a major third. That's why it's a half diminished, not a full diminished. That would need to be an A flat note to stick with the minor thirds there. Okay, so hopefully that helps explain a little bit of what the difference is between a diminished chord and a half diminished chord. Let me know in the comments section what acoustic guitar topics you'd like to see covered in future videos. As you can see, I do answer your questions in the comments, of course, but as you can see today, and there are other Q&A sessions on the channel too, with more to come, I will most likely take your question if it's a good one and address it much deeper in one of these particular sessions. So don't be shy. Ask away. I love reading your comments and questions. If you like this video, then hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and of course hit the all important notification bell button. That way YouTube tells you when I've released a new video. This is Simon Candy from acousticguitarlessonsonline.net. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, I really appreciate your time and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.